Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Soul Stories, because every soul has a story. And the more we share our stories, we realize that we are far more similar than we are different. And today I'm super excited to introduce to you Kelly Sharon. Kelly and I met through a mutual friend about a month ago, and I just thought, oh, she's got a really awesome story that she can share with everybody. So I invited her to be on today. So I am going to hear her story right along with you guys, and it's going to be super fun. So, Kelly, welcome.
Thank you.
So, she was born in Canada in the 1960s. She studied computer programming in college, but went a different path. Can any of you relate to that? She spent many years in a variety of industries, including graphic arts and design, administration and high finance, manufacturing, and healthcare. After nearly 20 years in healthcare, she bought her own business and loves being an entrepreneur. It's something she always wanted to do. So she's the mother of one child and a lover of animals and life. And Kelly, I'm so excited to hear more about your story.
Oh, so where do I begin?
It's your story. You get to begin wherever you want.
So, of course, growing up in the 60s, it was an interesting time, so different than today's energy, for myself, but also for young women today, their choices and options are so different. I studied computer programming in college. And literally, the only job that was easy for me to get coming out of college was the key punch operator. And I sat there and I went, I'm not doing that. I'm not sitting in front of a keyboard all day long. I don't want to do that nonsense. So I went to hairstyling school and did that for about 5 years, but got married in the meantime and we moved around a lot. In 30 years of marriage, we moved 12 times.
Oh,
Do the
wow.
math. That's pretty scary, actually. And it was through that though that it really developed a talent in myself in that I could adapt so easily and so quickly to new environments. It was like within a week, I would know where everything I needed near, where it was, how to get there. In the earlier parts before smartphones and GPS maps, I would do a lot of map studying before we moved to the area, that kind of thing. So because we moved, hairstyling wasn't really the greatest profession because we'd move and I'd have to start all over again. So I got into a print shop, and just by sheer luck, within about 6 months, they needed somebody to take over their graphic arts side of things. And that's where I really learned how creative I was. I really, really enjoyed it. But at the same time, it utilized my education in computer programming because that was when you had to have some programming capability. You had to visualize the document that you were creating because it was programmed to print in a what they call it, photographic processing trays and that kind of thing. So it was kind of interesting. It stimulated my intelligence and my desire to learn, but it also fed my creative side. So then I did about 5 or 6 years in that. And then, desktop publishing came in and, another move to another house, a new community. And I spent about 6 years working for a home hardware paint and chemical division in Burford, Ontario. So they did all of the paint for the home hardware stores in Canada, across Canada. So I did a few different roles there. I started out in reception, worked up to payables and receivables and purchasing, and then worked for the production manager. So I was involved in refitting and retooling of the plant. It was really interesting. And because I worked for the plant manager, I also got involved with the folks in the lab. So I got to see the scientific side of manufacturing the products that we made, which was primarily paints. And it was really cool because it gave me a great deal of insight to the industry and how small it really is, and how good their particular product was because of the way it was tested and whatnot. So I was a big, still am, but I'm not living in Ontario anymore, or Canada, period. um, I was a big proponent for their products. So I used to upsell, talk to people about it, and, get my friends to switch from the more expensive versions, kind of thing. But anyways, I had fun with that job. I think I was there 6 years, and then another move happened. So then I had the opportunity to work for Bacardi Martini in Ontario, which was a really cool job.
Wow.
Um, they're a great company to work for. They really treat their staff very, very well. And, every paycheck we had a coupon for a product in our paychecks. So it was kind of cool. Became sort of this trade-off thing. So people liked one product and others liked another. So we would trade around over the, time that I was there. But that was working in their merchandising and branding division. So I had the opportunity to learn the liquor industry and how things are licensed in Ontario. And it was actually really enjoyable, but I got that again, my creative side was fed because I was involved in the marketing side of things. And then I went into high finance as an admin assistant. And that was equally as interesting, floor plan financing for Deutsche Financial. Um, and we had multi-million-dollar accounts
Mhm.
with big um, distribution centers that, or sales centers in Ontario or across Canada, actually, I should say, selling boats and RVs and um, in those days, it was electronic equipment as well. We would fund for their floor plan. So it gave them the money to buy all of the equipment and have all this inventory to sell, but they didn't have to have the money in their bank to buy the products to have the inventory. It was kind of cool. It's really interesting. And in the midst of all that, I became a mom in 1990, and my daughter is a very strong, courageous, incredibly beautiful young lady, and I'm so, so proud of her. We've had our outs in the last few years, but hopefully things will get better in that department, but I'll go into that a little bit more later. And then in 2000, and I can't remember what year it was now. It's got to be 2000. Where are we now? 2014, 2010, or 2011. My husband and I separated after 30 years. And that was an interesting time because it was my decision to move on from that relationship because it just wasn't feeding my soul. And I realized that he wasn't willing to change, even though he kind of said he would, and he did for a short time. And then, there was always this resistance. Men of that genre really have a stigma about going for counseling.
Mhm.
And I went for 2 years and realized that that's how I realized things weren't going to change. And I have no regrets because we have a beautiful daughter. We had a great life. We had ups and downs like every relationship. We just got to a point where we didn't have anything to talk about. We'd go out for dinner and it would be dead silence. He would be on his, back then it would be a BlackBerry, or, we didn't have smartphones the way they are now. And I'd be feeling really not respected, for
Mm.
one, and unappreciated in many ways. And of course, when I did broach the subject of separation, his immediate response was, "Oh, no, no, don't, we can fix this." But I realized after a short time that that was his pride speaking. He didn't want the marriage to break up because he didn't want to have to tell people. I, on the other hand, was quite the opposite. I was telling all my friends and family and sharing my reasons why, because they were very surprised. They were shocked. I really worked very hard to try and make that relationship work. And whether people saw that or not, I really didn't care because it was me. I knew how I was dealing with it. And so when I left, it was a happy time for me. Not so much for him, but he never once tried to keep me under his wing. It was immediately an amicable review of who was going to take what from the house and that kind of thing. And it just felt like he was doing this,
Wow.
like good to be done with me kind of thing. And I kept saying, yeah, I made the right decision. I still care about him. We don't communicate at all. He's married again. So if he were to phone me tomorrow, I would talk to him and be happy to converse with him, and very respectfully. I have no animosity. There's no hard feelings. About a year and a half, almost 2 years, yeah, well, 2 years after we separated, I met the love of my life. We were truly soulmates. We were two peas in a pod. All of those expressions rolled into one. We just balanced each other so beautifully. We were born in the same year, a few months apart. He was actually a few months younger. I was born in May. He was born in September. Um, we both had so much life experience that when we met and it felt so right, we just knew it was meant to be. Now, we met online, believe it or not,
Wow.
and it was one of those things. I kept looking at his profile and I'd go, "Oh no, he's 4 hours away. I don't know if I want to be involved with somebody that far. I don't want long distance relationship and all that nonsense." And I can't remember, neither one of us could remember who said it, but at one point, because the dating app would tell you so and so has looked at your profile again. And I knew he kept looking at my profile, and he knew I kept looking at his profile. Finally, one of us said, "If you're going to keep looking at my profile, I should at least say hello and send a message." So then we shared phone numbers after about 2 weeks of talking, messaging through the app. We shared phone numbers, and the first time we spoke voice to voice on the phone was like pure magic. It was, we just hit it off so beautifully. There was something so warm and so genuine in him. And yet, I had all my friends looking at me going, "Are you crazy? You don't know this man. You don't know him from Adam. You know nothing about him. You've never met him," and blah, blah, blah. But I knew in my heart there was something right about it. So we agreed to meet it was about 2/3 for me and well, almost halfway. So we met in Gananoque, which is the Thousand Islands, which is um, along the St. Lawrence Seaway. And it's a beautiful, picturesque town. And I rented a hotel, and he picked me up at the hotel, and we went for dinner that night. And we talked until like 3 o'clock in the morning. We just talked and talked and talked and talked. And then the next day we met up for breakfast. and we went on a river cruise, which took us to the Heart Island in the middle of the St. Lawrence Seaway and part of the whole Gananoque, the Thousand Islands. And Heart Island, there's a very romantic story to this, and I think he was intentionally chose that because he wanted to appeal to my romantic side and show his romantic side to me. So it was really cool. So this gentleman had bought this island. He was a wealthy merchant, and he was building a palace, a castle on the island for his wife. And the castle was partway through construction, nearer completion than not, when his wife suddenly crashed the castle.
Oh,
But
say that again. Just you broke up right when you were telling what happened to the wife.
she passed away suddenly and unexpectedly. So he didn't finish the castle, but he willed the castle to the state of New York. And New York, the state of New York and the province of Ontario did a joint venture, and they've been refurbishing the house. And they are doing a spectacular job of it. So when we were touring, and I should caveat that with he was in construction, he was a finishing foreman.
Oh, wow.
So construction, architecture, the detail of a structure, it was something that he was passionate about. And I have a real interest in architecture, especially ancient architecture. It's just something I love to see everywhere I go in older towns. I love to look at architecture. So he he kept pointing things out to me, the detail in the finishing. But when we were touring through, you could see some of the parts of the house that hadn't been refurbished and had weathered and damaged from water leaks in the roof and that kind of thing. And it was incredible to see with the modern technology what they were able to accomplish. And it was incredible as well to see that they were sticking to his original vision of the property. So sticking to, they had copies of the original drawings here and there throughout the building. It was just amazing. And it was such a romantic and beautiful experience. The whole day was amazing.
Oh, I can imagine.
So
I'm shaking
then,
my head
yeah,
because I've been there, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
very far from where I live,
Oh, cool. That's
hours
cool.
away. Yeah, about 3 hour drive.
So we finished that day with a lovely dinner and a walk around town. And then the next morning we had breakfast and we had to say our goodbyes. And we both had tears in our eyes. We did not want to leave each other. So we made a commitment that we would, at least every 2 weeks, one would drive one way and the other would drive the other way to come and see each other. And we stuck to that commitment until about early October. He came to Ontario, or to my place, which I was west of Toronto at the time in the Hamilton Burlington area. And he was in Ottawa, so it was a good 4 or 5 hours drive. So he came to my place and we talked, and we thought, maybe it was time for me to come stay more than a couple of days. And we started talking about living together. And we thought at the time, our discussions were that we would just rent something together. I would move to Ottawa because it was easier for me than it was for him because his mom was elderly and he had a son there younger than my daughter. And so I went to the Ottawa area, rented a little cottage for a week, and we spent a fair bit of time together and just fell even deeper in love. And then next thing we knew, we were kind of kicking around tires. We were looking at properties together because I was curious to see what properties were worth. And next thing I knew, we had put an offer on a house and we bought ourselves a house together. And then, so the plan was I was going to stay with a friend in Hamilton and drive back and forth and stay at my job because I didn't want him to have sole responsibility for the mortgage and bills at the house. And I didn't know how long it would take for me to find a job. So I ended up doing a job application at the Ottawa Hospital, and that's where I met Jen, our mutual friend. And it was for a project, and I had just completed my project management certificate and was really excited about getting into a junior level position. But when I interviewed with Jen, she saw something greater in me and hired me at a mid-level project management in change management. Um, and it was one of the most rewarding and enlightening experiences I've ever had. And Jen really encouraged my strength and um, confidence in myself. And I changed a lot when I was with that group. Met a lot of amazing people, most of whom I don't keep in touch with now, but while I was in the Ottawa area, we did.
And
So
for
then,
anybody that's listening right now, Jen was on Soul Stories last time. So go back
yeah,
to the last Soul Stories and you'll see Jen who hired
and
Kelly.
I've seen it. She sent me the link. So, about just over 2 years into the project, Jen had actually left the project at that point. I know she left it and came back and then left it again. We were about to see our contracts either renew or end. And my husband had a passion for, um, uh, what do you call them? Oh my gosh, I'm going to forget the name. Um, Tropical shirts, the fancy pattern
Like
dress
Hawaiian
shirt,
shirts.
Hawaiian shirts. That's it. And we had gone to Cuba together, and he bought a Hawaiian shirt while we were there. But we were both absolute fanatics for muscle cars. And we both loved drag racing. And even as a teenager, I drag raced and was the flag girl
Oh my
on the
goodness.
illicit
Interesting.
backstreet drag races in
I
the
did
middle
not
of the
expect to hear that
Essex
from you.
County.
I love it.
It's a side of me that very few people have seen, but anyone who really knows me knows there's nothing better than the purr of a big block engine. So anyways, he bought this shirt and I took it to a place not far from where we were living that did embroidery, and they created the Challenger RT logo to go across the back of his shirt. So when I picked it up, I was talking to the owners, and they had talked about the fact that they were thinking about selling the business. And when I left there, this thought started trickling through my head. I was like, oh, I could do that. I know I could do that. I'm tired of working in healthcare. I'd really like to try this. But my old ghost self was saying, oh, no, it'll never work. It'd be a lot of work. If it doesn't get off the ground, poor Brett's going to be stuck paying all the bills and blah, 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 blah. So it took me about 2 weeks to bring it up to Brett, but it was interesting because if I hadn't been so keenly interested, I never would have broached the subject with him because every time I had brought it up with my previous partner, I would get shot down, like put down and shot down. There was absolutely no support for that kind of personal growth in my past. So I was worried that he would disagree, that he would feel that it wasn't the right time or the right thing for me to do. And I thought, you know what? Well, if I never ask, I'm never going to know. So we went out for a Friday night date night, pizza and beer, wine for me. And I said to him, I said, I have this idea. I want to run it by you. And when I told him what I was thinking, his immediate response was shocking. I sat there and I went, what? I can't believe you just said that. He looked at me and he said, that's the perfect idea for you, honey. I can see you doing that. I think this is a great idea. Blah, blah, blah. And he was just 200% on board with what I wanted to do. And I had never in my whole life had that kind of support for anything. As I said, it was a shock and a good one. So the very next day, I caught up with the owners, and funny enough, they had sold all of the equipment, lock, stock, and barrel. And I looked at the gentleman and I said, well, equipment's just equipment. I can always buy new or used equipment to get started. And he looked at me and he kind of went, oh, yeah, you're right. I said, what I want from you is your customer list, your artwork, your website, your phone number, and this rental so that people can find me. And I said, I'd like 3 to 6 months worth of your time to support me to get it off the ground. And he looked at me and he looked at his wife and he looked back at me and he goes, you got a deal. For $12,000, I bought myself a business.
Oh my
I proceeded to go on the internet the very next day and start looking for used equipment. And it was very, very available. Let's put it that way. So I bought a used screen print machine, a used heat press, a used digital cutter, and a bunch of materials. And within 3 weeks, I was up and running. And
wow.
I was my own boss and ran my own business and successfully. They had sales of about 170,000 in the, no, 150,000 in the 2 years prior to me taking over. In the first year, which didn't start till May, so I only had 7 months in business, I did 180,000 in sales. The second year, we grew to 350,000 in sales. And the third year that would have been, so that was 2019. We did over 350,000 that year. But unfortunately, 2 days after Christmas in 2019, Brett passed away. Very suddenly, very unexpectedly. He wasn't ill. He had a little bit of high blood pressure, but we had gone to bed and we had the TV on because we both fell asleep easier with the TV noise in the background. And I had kind of roused a little bit and clicked the TV off, and he rolled over and said, "Good night, my love." And the next thing I knew, I was listening to what I realize now to be his last dying breaths. Basically just the air escaping from his lungs as his body went into complete death, I guess is the way to say it. I got out of bed, ran around the bed, started yelling at him and taking his pulse, and my immediate feeling was that he was gone. He had left me. But he was only 58. So I started CPR while I was dialing 911, and within 15 minutes, I would say the ambulance arrived and a second one followed shortly thereafter. I heard them say from the other room, we didn't have a very big house. I'll tell you about the house though. I heard them say at least twice clear because they were using a defibrillator. And in 3 occasions, I heard them say they were putting epi into an EpiPen, or like an epi injection into his heart muscle. I knew enough, absorbed enough medical terminology working in healthcare for 20 years that wasn't a good sign. By the time I got to the hospital, they had declared him dead, but they worked on him for an hour at the house, an hour at the hospital, and there was no reviving him. So when they finally did an ultrasound of his chest was full of blood, which means something major in his chest, his heart, or his artery had burst. Mm-hmm. And that's when they ceased trying to revive him. But in many ways, after an hour of no sign of heart activity, I was grateful that they didn't, because if they did revive him at that point, he would have been left with some severe brain damage or physical limitations. And I knew he couldn't live like that. I knew he'd be an absolute jackass. There's no way he would want to be like that in his life. It was so difficult. Still to this day, I wrestle with the emotions. He was my best friend. He was my soulmate. We had so little time together. It felt so unfair. And yet I can reason that and tell myself I was meant to be with him those last 6 years of his life, to make him happy in those years. It was the first time in his life he had actually had his name on a house, on a property, because his previous partners had properties before he met them and never was, added to the property, the deed or what have you. And all of his friends, everyone who gathered around us, told me, I've never seen him happier. I've never seen him this happy in all the years I've known him. And they were long-term friends, right? So to hear that and to see how happy he was in our marriage and in the life that we built together was quite rewarding for me. We had the house that we bought. I should have told this part earlier, but the house that we bought was a little log house in a little town outside of Ottawa, about 3,000 people. And we loved it. It was on 2.5 acres. And it was part bush, part lawn, if so to speak, with a garage for him to tinker with his race car. And the upstairs loft area was a workshop for him. He used to do woodworking, and he called himself the, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget the term, the hillbilly carpenter, because everything he did was with raw materials that he found on the property. Wow. He built stairs at the back of the house because it was a walkout basement, and he built stairs at the side of the house because it was up on a bit of a hill. That the railing was a cedar branch, like a cedar a cedar tree that had fallen in our back lot, and he just made this amazing stairwell with all these branches intertwined that looked like lightning strikes. It was so beautiful. And unfortunately, I knew instinctively that I couldn't manage the property. We had a 100-foot long driveway, so just plowing it in the winter would be a nuisance. he used to spend 3 hours cutting the grass. And the outside of the house, of course, needed regular maintenance. And it broke my heart, but I knew I couldn't be there without him either. It just was too much. There was too much of him in the house. It was this constant, everything I looked at would just caused heartache. It broke my heart to see it, but it broke my heart to leave it. It was such a difficult decision, but I made the decision to sell the house and downsize to something that I could manage on my own. Sorry. Just
We have a guest.
um I knew I couldn't do it. I couldn't manage the mortgage and the business. And yeah, I very quickly decided to sell the house and move. And I bought a mobile home
Mm,
in a little community just not far from my business. And within about a year, I realized my heart wasn't in the business anymore because Brett and I were doing it together so that he could retire
mm,
and we would work at the business together, still making money, to support ourselves, but he wouldn't have the stress and the hassle of driving into Ottawa every day. And without his help, it was so much work and so difficult to just keep going in every day. So I sold the business. And the fellow that bought it was actually somebody that I knew in the industry. He had been doing that work. Sorry, it was a screen print and embroidery shop, by the way. He was doing the work, but he was outsourcing all of the work. So he was working out of his house, didn't have brick and mortars shop to greet people. He was always on the road doing his sales,
mm,
and he was quite interested in a partnership. And I said, no, the only partnership I was ever interested in was with my husband. So I said, I will stay with you and we'll see how it works. I'll give it a year and then I'll go from there. So in that time, I knew I hadn't completely grieved my husband because there was so much change. So he died December 2019. March of 2020, of course, we got shut down. The business got shut down because of COVID.
mhm,
At the same time, my landlord got greedy with the rent and I had to move the business. So Brett died in December. January, I found out I had to move my business. March, we closed due to COVID for 3 months. And then at the end of May, I moved to my new house. And in July of that year, 2020, we had a tribute to Brett at the drag strip in Luskville, Quebec, which was where he and his buddy that he grew up with from 4 years old uh, used to drag race as teenagers. And Brett had a car that was sponsored. And so he was very, very involved in that. And they put ashes on the back of Steve's car, his friend's car. And I was in the passenger seat, which they never allow at a drag strip for safety reasons. You're not allowed passengers. But because we were doing this tribute to Brett, they allowed me to do it. So when Steve took off, the ashes scattered across the track, which was a fitting tribute to my husband. Fitting, very fitting. And then a good chunk of his ashes got spread around the area where they used to sit and chat and boast about their cars and that kind of stuff. And then a big bulk of the ashes got spread at the house as well because he loved that house. So still, as I say, to this day, I struggle with the emotions. I have pictures of him around my new house, and I find myself tearing up sometimes. And when I talk about him at length, it just hits me again. But I feel so blessed that we were together. I was able to see what real love was, what a good relationship was. Unfortunately, a year after he passed away, I also got involved with somebody that I wish I had never gotten involved with. He was a true cut and dried narcissist. I fell head over heels. I think it was just rebound emotions with having lost my husband, and got involved too fast, too deep with this fella. After he moved in with me, within about 3 months, I was kind of like, oh my gosh, how do I get out of this? I'm not happy. He was lying and like just not a good person. Classic narcissist. And then finally one day, it was after I was close to finishing my year term with the business. I just kicked him out. I said, enough. I can't deal with this anymore. I'm done with you. And that's it. It took all his stuff and put it out in the back for him to come pick up when I wasn't home and all of that. And then one night, it was late at night, about 10:30, he came over. I think honestly he was looking for a place to stay because he had sold his house when we moved in together, and he
Mm,
had bought an RV. And anyways, I I foolishly let him in,
mm,
because it was winter. I don't know why. Still to this day, I don't know why I let him in the house.
mm,
And he was a heavy drinker as well, which was bad. He had pockets full of beer and he was drinking as he was talking to me, and the conversation spiraled out of control. And I was going for counseling at the time because I was still wrestling with Brett and this new person in my life and the way he was behaving. And I think that's probably where I got the courage to kick him out.
mhm,
But fortunately, my neighbor saw him pull in the driveway. She just happened to look out the window at the time that he showed up. Now, she knew that I was nervous of him because he had made threats.
mm,
Um, so she messaged me on my phone and said, "Is everything okay?" I said, "Give me 20 minutes. If I don't answer you, call the police." And if it hadn't been for her and for her calling the police after 20 minutes, he was in the midst of attempting to rape me, and he had his hand around my throat, and I was about to black out when the police came through the front door because I had been screaming and she heard the screams. But she didn't want to enter because she wouldn't, I wouldn't expect anyone to put themselves at risk. Um, and this one really gets to me because I do blame myself for what happened because I let him in the door, but I don't blame myself because I'm not the one who did what he did, and I didn't ask for that. But 3 months later, I had stopped working for the shop, the business that I had sold, and I sold my mobile home initially with the intention of moving back to the western part of Ontario to be closer to my family and my friends that were in that area. Because as much as I had a great relationship with Brett's family and friends, my family and my friends on the other side of Toronto were much closer to me, and I wanted to be closer to them. Unfortunately, fortunately, but unfortunately, I sold my house at the peak of a really insane housing market post-COVID in 2021. The houses were selling for, they first of all were listing 100,000 over what they were valued at the year before. They were selling for up to 200,000 above listing price because people were desperate to get into the housing market, particularly in outlying smaller communities, because they didn't want to be stuck in big cities like Ottawa anymore. They wanted to be out away from the chaos and the mayhem of and the loneliness of what happened during COVID. They wanted to be on properties where they could, become self-supporting or self-sustaining, growing their own fruits and vegetables, and putting up solar panels so they could be off grid, that kind of thing. And Ottawa's always had that flair for that sort of thing anyways. So when I sold my house, I made really good money off of it. However, when I went looking for another property, there was very little that I could afford. And at the time, I had semi-retired, because I didn't want to work full time. I thought, oh, I'll just work part time. Well, getting a mortgage was going to be next to impossible. So I said to a friend of mine who I talk to at least once or twice a week still to this day, we're very, very close. I said, I'm just going to go travel. I said, Ireland has been on my bucket list since I was a kid. I've wanted to go. So I'm just going to go. I'm just going to go travel and see where it takes me. And so I booked a flight. I put everything into storage, including my car and my truck, and sold off a ton of stuff before I did that. And then I got to Ireland and I didn't want to go back to Canada. I just was, it felt like home. It felt like where I was meant to be. And funny enough, one of the friend that I speak to quite regularly is quite intuitive. I would say she has latent psychic abilities. She said to me one day when we were having lunch prior to coming to Ireland, because I had gone to the city where she lives to put my stuff into storage because she was going to keep an eye on my stuff for me. She said, "You're not coming back." And I said, "Oh, what do you know? What are you talking about? That's silliness. Of course I'm coming back. I have a daughter here and blah blah blah." But I haven't gone back. I I ended up putting an offer on a house in July of 21, 22, sorry, July of 22. And in October, I flew back to Canada to sell my car and my truck and all my stuff in storage. And by December, I had my permission to come back to Ireland. And I came here with 5 suitcases and my guitar case. And I have no intention of going back to Canada.
Love that. Oh my gosh.
I was fortunate enough to buy a house here in Ireland without a mortgage, which means so much to me. Um, that's where I was when I had the mobile home. Not having debt was so important to me. Being single, you just never know when your health might become an issue, or, you might have to pick up and travel for family situations or what have you. And so that means a lot to me. But I also, when I first came to Ireland as well, I realized I was soul searching. I was looking for myself. I was finding myself. I realized I had awakened and I was very in tune to, they call the red flag list. When it comes to men, I'm very quick at recognizing certain traits that I will not tolerate and will not put up with anymore. But I am a serious, oh my gosh, losing words here. I don't normally talk for this long, so that's why. I am a serious empath.
Yeah.
So I draw certain types of people to me, and I know that. So now that I know that, and I'm aware more of what those personality traits are, I'm much better at making good choices for myself. I did date somebody for a period of time here in Ireland. Um, didn't take me long to realize he wasn't my person. Not a narcissist by any means, but certainly not somebody that I wanted to spend all my time with. I'm working full time right now with the intention of just doing a few things around the house, some renovations. And once those are done, then I'm a free spirit again. I can do whatever I please.
Hey, that's so great to hear.
When I when
Congratulations.
I came here as well, I flew my dog Daisy over with me.
Oh, yay.
She's laying here watching me very intently.
Hi, Daisy. Thanks for being on the show with us.
I not long before the recording got home from work, so she's still waiting for her evening walk.
Oh. It'll be just a few minutes, Daisy. Wow. And so
Just
how
a,
is she enjoying Ireland?
oh, she loves it.
Uh,
She was very happy for the first year when I was fully retired because we'd go for walks 2 or 3 times a day. Now she's not quite so thrilled that I'm out every day, but that's only temporary. She doesn't know that yet, but that's only temporary. So yeah.
wow, I've heard so many. I've had two or three friends right now who have just gone to Ireland, like within the last 6 months,
Right.
on different
Yeah.
trips, and I've seen
Well,
so many beautiful pictures.
you can see on the wall, that's my motto.
Make your dreams happen.
Make your dreams happen.
Yes,
No one else will do it for you. You have to pursue your own dreams. And
exactly.
I did. I definitely did. What I love about being in Ireland is that I can easily travel to Portugal, Spain, the UK. Sorry, Daisy's drinking.
Oh, no worries.
Um, or anywhere in Europe, and the flights are quite reasonable. It's really just picking and choosing where you want to go and pick a point on a map and decide you're going to go. Now, I haven't had that opportunity just yet, but in the next year I will for sure. I want to go to Spain and then Portugal and then Italy and France and Scotland. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, all the places I love. Oh my gosh, I haven't been to Scotland yet or Ireland yet, but yeah, definitely Spain,
Just
Portugal,
just
Italy, France.
the people here are so inviting and friendly, and
That's what I've heard.
the pace of life here is very different. It really is. You don't hear very many people dropping dead of heart attacks because the stress levels are totally, it's
Yeah.
very unique. Even in business, it's busy, very, very busy where I am. I got hired by a company that does printing and screen printing and custom clothing like I was doing in Canada. So it's right up my alley. But it's just different. There's there's no rush to anything. People aren't stressed about if I don't make that deadline, that's fine. I've got another event coming up too, like it's refreshing in so many ways. And people, when they come to Ireland, you'll notice that there's a lot of pubs. And there are some people that will spend, a good amount of time in the pub on a daily basis, but it's because it's so prevalently a way of life. They're not out to get wasted every night. They're just out to meet their family and friends and, sing some songs or listen to their local music or upbeat music. I shouldn't say upbeat. The Irish music is very upbeat, I'm using the wrong terms, but um, more modern music as well. And it's just a way of life. It's part of who they are and what they do. In Canada, it's not necessarily well reflected on a woman going into a pub on her own.
Right,
Here in
exactly.
Ireland, if you don't go into a pub on your own, um, and you tell people that you're not comfortable doing it, they look at you like you've grown two heads. They're like, what are you talking about? Of course you can go to the pub. You can, so and so's there all the time. You can have a chat with him. It's very different. Very
Oh,
different.
I love that. You're really making me want to come to Ireland now.
Well, I have a spare bedroom. So,
Oh, be
you
careful
know,
what you offer. I may take you up on it. I would
I
love
keep
to come.
saying that to my friends, but so far I've had one person take me up on the offer, but I know the flights are not cheap from Canada, especially, but there's limited flights coming out of certain airports. But I know from the States, there's more flights to Ireland. There's a lot of Americans that come to Ireland
Yes.
to find their history, their family history.
Yeah.
So many people with long, long history of Irish background. I have a little bit of Irish in me. My mother's Irish, English, Scottish, but my father, both his parents were Irish born.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so long, long history of Irish in the background. In
Wow.
fact, on Ancestry DNA, I think I'm 84% Irish, which is pretty high.
Right? No wonder you feel at home.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Where are you in Ireland? In the southern,
So
northern?
I am in the Midwest. So I'm on the West Coast, it's in County Kerry,
Okay.
near Killarney town and Tralee. So it's quite central. So if there were a lot of homes available at much lower prices out on the peninsulas, but the peninsulas, you've got a 45-minute or more drive in to the mainland before you can get to the towns where doctors and shopping and all of that stuff are.
Mhm.
I'm so lucky in this little town that I've chosen. There's a river walk, it's very picturesque. There's a main street, it boasts being the widest main street in the world because it used to have a row of houses down the middle of it and they cut the houses out and just left it as a wide main street.
Wow.
And it has everything I need is within walking distance.
Oh my
So
gosh.
I, originally had that picture perfect little cottage out in the county in my mind, but the more I looked, the more I realized this was the right way to go for me. I'm in an end townhouse unit, so if I want to pick up and go away for a week, I just pick up and go away for a week. The only thing I have to worry about is my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's safe, it's quiet, it's peaceful. I've met all my neighbors now, and they're all wonderful people. We've got two rentals that have folks from the Ukraine in them, and they're lovely people as well. Yeah, I can't ask for better. And
Wow.
I have my moments where I get very lonely, not having a partner. The evenings are the hardest. Um, and I said to my friend in Ontario there, I said, it wouldn't be any different no matter where I set my
Yeah.
teepee, so to speak.
Mhm.
I I would not have been able to afford a house in cities or towns where I have friends and family currently in Ontario, anyways. So I would have been out in the boonies in the middle of nowhere by myself,
Mm.
um, and probably in a community that I might not have liked as much as I do this one. Because I had done my due diligence and was looking at properties while I was staying here in Ireland. And it was impossible. There was nothing coming up that
Mhm.
didn't need a gazillion repairs. You know, you were paying 300,000 for a dump, you know, something that had no insulation and was falling down and had no foundation or that kind of thing. And I wasn't prepared to do that.
So
Yeah.
was it difficult to, so are you able to stay in Ireland now forever, like,
Yeah.
for as long as you
So,
want? Was that
yeah,
an easy process of getting
originally
permission?
originally when I came here as a Canadian retired, I would have to renew my permission on an annual basis.
Mm.
And basically, they just want to know that you have health insurance in place and that private health insurance to enhance what they provide, you know, and that you could sustain yourself financially. So you need to be financially independent. Now, I knew I wanted to work. So because my mother was born in the UK, I was able to get my UK citizenship. And with my UK citizenship, I can be here at, at my discretion and not have to prove my ability to stay, and I can work here.
Nice.
So, and I can avail myself of other benefits as well. So that's why, you know, it took me about a year to get my UK citizenship just because of a delay with some paperwork coming from Canada. But that was partly my fault, not theirs, anyways. But
Mm.
yeah, so with the UK citizenship as well, it's even easier to travel throughout parts of Europe.
I
I
bet.
would take both passports and, you know, have both available kind of thing, use one for different purposes. And yeah, it just gives me a lot more freedom to,
Yeah.
and you know, I'm 63 now. I retired a little early. I just decided to take my pensions early to partially fund my trip to Ireland because it wasn't cheap. You know, staying for 6 months. I did end up renting a home share, and I'm still friends with that gentleman and the fellow that we shared with, the other young lad that was in the house. I didn't know about that until I was here for a few weeks.
Mm.
So I, you know, I was able to do things to make it more cost effective to be here. I did rent a car, and that cost me a small fortune. I could have bought myself a car for what I rented it for. Of course, post COVID, you know, everything was crazy expensive, right? So,
Oh my goodness.
but yeah, I mean, things are leveling out a bit here in Ireland. So the hotels are in Dublin, it's very expensive, but outside of Dublin, prices of hotels and Airbnbs and bed and breakfasts are getting more leveled out. The cost of renting cars now that they've reestablished their whole fleets. They've got lots of vehicles available, so the price is not what it was when I came over. And no, it's just there's just so much to see. So one of my experiences here in Ireland, I'll tell you about that very briefly. There's a lot of ancient stone circles here
Yes.
in Ireland. And I came across one in the town of Kenmare, which is southwest Kerry. In the stone circle, my very first experience in there, I had this like preconceived idea of what stone circles were and what they might mean to me, having been awakened. My very first experience was incredibly ethereal. I had this low level vibrational hum in the background, and there were no hydro wires, there's no industry, there's nothing around this stone circle. There was nothing that would have caused it besides energy in the earth. I took my shoes off. It was a warm day, although it was raining, it was warm. So I took my shoes off and I walked barefoot around the circle and touched every stone. Then I went into the middle and I touched the middle, the stone in the center of the circle. And all of a sudden the wind picked up and this vibrational noise settled down a little bit. And it's surrounded by very large, probably 60-year-old pine and deciduous trees. And it was like, I felt like I was being spoken to with the noise of the wind. And it was all very calming, very soothing, but there was this intense emotion associated with the whole experience. It was raining and I had a raincoat with a hood up. And I took the hood off and realized my face was wet from tears, not from the rain. And then it stopped raining and the sun peeked through one little blue spot in the clouds. And the vibrational hum sort of grew again and it got very warm. It got very, very, very incredibly warm. And the wind suddenly dropped, like it just disappeared. And I looked up and it was very gray, very cloudy, which is typical of Ireland. Even on a beautiful summer day, it can be very cloudy. And the trees, it was so funny. It was dead still, but all of a sudden, one at a time, these old, super tall, like 4-story tall trees bowed towards me, one at a time. And I counted and I went, oh my gosh, there's one for every person I'm close to who's in heaven. My
Wow.
grandmother, my grandfather, my mother, my father, my husband. And I wept openly for a good 20 minutes and just sat on one of the stones. And the second time I went back oh, as I was leaving, it started to rain again that day. So it was like it stopped raining to allow me to grieve and go through like all the feelings and emotions I was dealing with there. And then it started to rain again. And there was not one person who came to visit besides myself while I was there. Other times I've been there and they've been people coming and going the whole time I've been there.
Wow.
Because it's right at the edge of Kenmare, so it's very easy to access. Anyways, the second experience, it was similar, but I didn't hear the vibrational hum. But what I did feel was this overwhelming sense of joy, happiness, just pure, unadulterated, obliterating joy and happiness. And I put my hands up and I said, thank you. Thank you for this. I take this gift and I will share it with others. And since then, every time I visit, it's joy, peace, and calmness that I experience. Yeah, so I've been to other stone circles in Ireland. I've been to one up in Donegal. Apparently, there's another one in outside of Kenmare, which I need to go see. The next time I go down that way, I'm going to make that side trip for sure. But there's so many ancient relics in Ireland that really speak to me, to my soul, and I want to continue to travel Ireland and see more of them.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of magical energies that are, a lot of the Earth's ley lines and the
Yes.
grids have been turned down and, corrupted, and now it's all coming back online. So a lot of these ancient
Yeah.
sites
Yeah.
are really starting to power up again now.
Yes, absolutely. And I think too, Ireland's always embraced their pagan history as well. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of respect for those old sites. They actually discovered a new one. I, I I didn't read the whole article, but there's a new one that was discovered in Northern Ireland not that long ago, probably about 3 or 4 months ago, and they've declared it a historical site. So they're very quick to retain them in whatever condition they're found, rehabilitate them if needed. There's a lot of I call them beehives, but they're oratories. So it's where people would gather, and it's literally, they look like a beehive. So it's like a cone-like building that's made out of stone, and it would have been a gathering place. It could potentially have been a home at some point in time in history, but some of them have been dated to um, 1300 BC. So they're very, very, very old structures and they're still intact as if they were built yesterday. It's amazing to see. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'm going to have to get my ducks in a row and come to Ireland. Experiencing some of this myself.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what I did, I think was the really the best way to see Ireland. Rent a car, to just travel, go off the beaten path, take that tiny little road that's barely wide enough for your vehicle to travel. Because I'll tell you, the spirit and the warmth and the genuine beauty of what you will find is worth it.
Wow. It
Yeah.
sounds amazing.
Mhm.
Wow, I'm so delighted that you have found your way to Ireland. And wow, thank you so much for sharing this beautiful story with us today,
Thank you
Kelly.
for having me.
Oh my gosh, it's so inspiring. And even though your love story was kind of cut short, it
Yeah.
was so fulfilling and so beautiful,
He
so
changed me. Yeah,
sad.
he changed me. He made me the person I am today.
Sure.
I had a little bit of help from people like Jen along the way, but Brett certainly opened up my heart and opened up my mind and, made me more courageous and adventurous, I think. Yeah.
Right? We all need those people in our lives who are surrounding us, supporting us, believing in us, helping
Yeah,
us to remember our brilliance and our
definitely.
courage, and to empower us to follow our own hearts and our own
Oh,
guidance.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yes,
I've definitely found my spiritual side.
yes,
And by that, I don't mean my religious side. I mean my spiritual side. Yeah.
yes. Letting
Yeah.
that soul come back into the body is so incredibly important.
Yeah.
So, bless you for this beautiful share. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with today?
I think um, just this, no matter how difficult, no matter how unsurmountable you may feel things in your life are, there's always a way through. There's always a way past. Look to other sisters to help you because they have the big hearts, they have the experience, they have the knowledge, they have the warmth to help you and guide you, and just find your courage because it's there. You can do anything you want to do in life. And I'm not finished doing what I want to do. So,
We have lots more to do as those who are bringing light back to this planet.
absolutely, absolutely.
Definitely not done. Wow. Kelly, thank you so, so, so much. This has been just an absolute joy to hear
Thank you,
your story
Lisa.
today. Thank you for sharing your beautiful heart and your beautiful energy with us and your beautiful Daisy dog with us.
Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, you're so welcome. So, and thank you all for listening today. I'm Lisa Warner. I'm the author of The Simplicity of Self Healing. And I created Soul Stories because every soul has a story. If you are listening to this Soul Stories episode, you too are a soul with a story. And we can make our stories anything we desire to make them. We are the tellers of our stories. So tell a great story because you can. Thank you all for listening today and joining us. And until next time, create for yourselves a great story because you can. Bye for now.